right, we'll go ahead and jump right in. My name is Emily Rischel, and I'm a marketing advisor with the Kansas Small Business Development Center. As you probably know, our presentation today is over SEO. It's what you need to know about SEO. Couple things to point out before we really jump in is that we do have a chat box that will be running throughout the presentation. And that's a place where you can put any questions that you may have or any comments like that. And I'll be checking those throughout the presentation, trying to answer them. But I'll also leave a good amount of time at the end for any questions that you may be thinking throughout. So feel free to utilize that. I'll check it as frequently as I can. Another thing to note is that at the end of this presentation, when we send out the presentation to you over email, you'll get both the PowerPoint slides as well as the recording of this presentation. And I'll try to put together a resource for you of just kind of some resource links that may be beneficial, because we're going to be talking a lot about different kinds of tools you could use. And so I'll provide some recommendations for those and send those out. So if you have any questions about what products or what tools I recommend, go ahead and just know that that'll be coming out and coming your way within the next couple of days. So, all right, we'll just go ahead and jump right in then. What you need to know about SEO. So here at the Wichita State University KSBDC, we do provide 3 different services, and I want to discuss these just briefly so you know, past these workshops, past these webinars, what our services or how our services could be of use to you. So we train, which is one function of our position here. That function pretty much looks like this. They're webinars or workshops when we're in person, where we pick kind of a broader topic and we try and convey as much information about that to you as we can. We also have advising, which is kind of the core function of the KSBDC. We meet one-on-one with you. You get a personal advisor. It's confidential, it's no cost to you, and we're able to discuss your specific business and your specific experience and give you some recommendations for that, help point out things that you may have a little, some blind spots towards, and really just help to get your business in the best place it can be. And the final function of the KSBDC is to connect you. So that can be connecting you with resources, some of our business partners like SCORE or Network Kansas. We can also connect you with other business owners that we may feel would be beneficial for you. So with permission from both, we can create those kinds of connections and help you expand your network. So if you are interested in receiving any of our advising services or receiving any connections or anything, go ahead. My email address will be at the end of this presentation. Feel free to shoot me an email and I will get you set up with either myself or another advisor to be able to really talk through these things one-on-one. So, just to make sure we are all on the same page for the sake of today's presentation, I want to define what is SEO. So SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. Search engines are going to be Google, we're going to focus on 3, Google, Yahoo, and Bing. And Yahoo and Bing are currently owned by the same company, so they're essentially counted as the same thing when you're talking about SEO, because you utilize the same strategy for both. So SEO utilizes, kind of in this image here, a lot of different technical, user-friendly kind of aspects of your website to be able to rank you throughout, let's use Google for instance, and Google's search results. Your goal is to be higher up in those search results, because that's going to allow you to be found. SEO also relates heavily to how much users enjoy your content and what kind of content you are creating and sharing. So Google has an algorithm that they use to measure all this. And it looks a little something like this, or works like this. So Google's spiders, or essentially just their little AI robots go through the web or crawl through the web all the time. They're constantly combing over all the new information that's coming in online, and they're visiting all these different web pages. Once they get to a web page, then they categorize it, they measure it against a bunch of different standards, and they choose what optimized pages there are. So they rank all these pages, they catalog them, and then they take these optimized pages and they add them to their kind of file cabinet of information. So this is all happening way before you've ever searched anything. Google is just constantly doing this. Same with Bing and Yahoo. So once they have this kind of catalog of here's some of the best websites and what they're talking about, and they have all this information on the websites, then when you search, they can very quickly pull up the best search results based off of the search terms that you've used, which is how you're able to get, off to the right here, 83 million results in a little over half a second. If they were searching through all these websites when you search, then it would take much longer to get those results because there's just such a massive amount of information that is available, and it would have to crawl through everything. So it pre-categorizes and catalogs them. That way it has the information just at hand. So why should you and your business focus on search engine optimization? Why should that be part of your marketing strategy? Well, ultimately, it's because you want to be found, especially if you're an e-commerce business, but even if you're not, a lot of your business is going to come online or from people finding you online. And how are people going to find about a product that they don't already know about the brand? They don't already know about exactly what they want. They're going to search for it. So just as an example, I brought up here best hairdresser in Missouri. And there were several options that came up right at the top here. You want to be in one of those kind of top 3 spots. So those are really the envied spots. And you want to be able to stay high ranking, even as search results maybe get a little bit more vague. So maybe instead of best hairdresser in Missouri, I would just search best hairdresser in the Midwest, in the United States, and seeing what kind of results would come up. And if you're still ranking high in those as search results get more vague, there's always room to improve. There's always, you can always improve your SEO going forward, and you can get into a lot of detail with that. What my goal is today, though, is not to make you an SEO expert. It's to get you acquainted with some of the options that you have regarding SEO. And my very first, before we get into any of the kind of specifics, is don't try to hack the system. So as you're talking about SEO, there are a lot of very specific things that you can do, like adding keywords here within your text, within your meta description, something like that. That can often lead people to focus on creating content and creating their website to please the Google algorithm, as opposed to being useful for the consumers that are actually going to be on there. So it's important to remember that if you're trying to hack the system, you're more than likely making your website less usable for the people who are going to be finding you, which is going to lead to a much lower conversion rate into sales. So you can get a whole flock of people who are coming to your website, but if you're not able to convert any of those people into sales, then it's all for nothing. And so it's important to remember that as you're creating your website or maintaining your website, you're making it for people. And algorithms, especially the Google algorithm, has gotten really good at knowing how to analyze content from a consumer's perspective or from a user's perspective rather than from a robot's perspective. And so there are continual updates that are being made to the Google search algorithm that will make it harder and harder for you to get good search results by hacking the system. Even more so, if you pick one specific strategy and you just run with only that specific strategy within SEO, then you run the risk of kind of having all your eggs in one basket because Google and Bing and Yahoo frequently change their standards for the algorithm and what does or doesn't help your SEO, or how much weight is given to one element versus another. Because of that, you want to make sure that you are taking a really holistic perspective and have a decent understanding of all the different elements that could go into it. It's also worth noting that they don't necessarily come out with a huge long list of here's everything that you can do to increase your SEO. There are lots of SEO experts who have done testing, and Google tells you what they value, which we'll go over in a minute here, but they don't necessarily come out with a big list of everything that you could possibly do to improve your SEO. So it's always going to be something of a guessing game, and you're always going to be having to stay on top of what's new and what's latest, because information could change and the system that you are using for your SEO may not work in 6 months. So kind of the acronym that's easiest to remember to determine whether or not your content that you're creating is going to be beneficial for your SEO relies on 3 factors, abbreviated as EAT. So it's expert, authoritative, and trustworthy. If your information is expert information, if you are an expert in your field and you come across as such through the content that you create, then you're going to be bumped up in the search rankings. If you're authoritative, if you have a good voice through your content, that's also going to bump you up through the search results. And then if users trust you, these are all not terribly quantitative. And so it's tough that's why this is kind of the guidelines that Google released, because it is a little bit more broad and vague. But this is the experience that they're trying to create for their users, for people who are searching for information. They want to encourage other web pages to have good, useful information that's expert, authoritative, and trustworthy. So I'm going to focus primarily on Google because Google has by far the largest quantity of searches. Although we'll talk a little bit at the end about when it may be beneficial to really put a lot of focus on Bing as well. But overall, I would say not all businesses need to focus on improving their SEO in Bing and Yahoo, but all businesses do need to focus on improving their search results in Google. So the top ranking factors for Google tend to be the content, the quality of your content, and the length of your content. How fresh your content is. So a relatively new feature for Google is that they give more weight to links that are newer. So if you are in the top 5 spots in their SEO, you're likely going to be bumped up to number 1 if your content is new. Backlinks, we'll discuss what backlinks are, but that's essentially when other people or other websites are linking to your page as a vote of confidence. Having your website be mobile friendly is so important, especially because a large quantity of searches are now taking place on a mobile device. Not only is that going to be beneficial for your SEO, but that's simply going to make it easier for consumers to find you. And then another top ranking factor is the page speed. So we all know that if you are waiting for a page to load for more than 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, we immediately become impatient, click off of it, and go find another article or a link that's going to load for us immediately. So having your page be quick to load is also a really important factor. I do want to mention about content quality and length as well, that long form articles content tend to rank a lot higher because they tend to have a lot more information for consumers. And so you may at this point be thinking, well, this is all great and good talking about creating content, but I sell widgets, and why would I try to create content to sell my widgets? And ultimately, it really is about how are you creating a community around your product to encourage lifetime consumers, and to encourage people to be your consumers for a lifetime. Also, is there an element of trust that is involved with the purchase of your product? Are they purchasing maybe consulting services? Maybe they're purchasing an item that is a little bit more expensive, or even just a simple, small little purchase still takes an element of trust between the consumer and the business to know that they're going to get what they paid for. One way that you can develop this trust before they even purchase from you is by creating quality content that they trust, because it costs them nothing to consume the content. And so it's like a trial run for, is this business trustworthy? Which, if you remember, was part of that EAT acronym. It also will allow them, especially if you provide some sort of an information or a service, it will give them the trust that you are an authority in your field or that you are an expert in your field. And so conveying that is going to really not only increase your SEO, but it's going to increase your marketing efforts in general, and should increase your conversion costs to, or your conversions to sales as well. So when we talk about content quality and length, obviously you want the quality and the length to appeal to a human factor. So you don't want to be creating articles or blogs just for an algorithm. That would be a really unfortunate hobby, in my opinion. Be creating your content for the users. But one way that you can utilize a algorithm view of your SEO and content is by utilizing keywords. So keywords are what people are searching. So when you go to Google and you type in wedding florists near me, those are keywords. And so you can break keywords into individual words. So wedding, flowers, Wichita, Kansas. Those are each keywords, they're each individual. But as you start to link them together, they start to establish new meanings. Google is really good and has recently came out with a new AI that is also really good at understanding the meaning behind these words. So it's not just trying to match keywords exactly, or it doesn't just break apart all these keywords and see, okay, what articles can I find that have as many of these words as possible? Google has now updated to understand, okay, what's the relationship between these words, and how can we create, or how can we find articles or information that is useful for our users? So if you're searching wedding flowers cost, then you're looking for something that's very different than wedding flowers near me, because wedding flowers cost is going to be looking for a dollar amount. You're probably going to be looking at an article that is estimating the cost of wedding flowers. But wedding flowers near me is looking at location and businesses that exist within that location, and providing easy contact information for those businesses, the distance between you and those businesses. So you're looking for very different information with each of these keyword searches. So the way that you as a business owner can utilize keywords is by understanding what keywords are popular in your industry. There are ways that you can do this through keyword search tools, which is I've used a keyword search tool to take this photo on the right here, where you can type in a general phrase. So I typed in wedding flowers. Maybe I'm a florist, I'm wanting to focus on that. I think there's a strong market for that. Type in wedding flowers, and then these are the top results in the US that are related to wedding flowers, or that contain the keywords wedding flowers. So there are keyword tools that have varying quality information. So this keyword tool takes the phrase wedding flowers together and then sees what else there is that is can be searched in addition to that, like wedding flowers, Wichita, Kansas. But other keyword tools, the paid keyword tools, not the free ones, are able to do kind of what Google does and find the relationship between things. And so they would be able to think a little bit more like a human would and say, okay, you're looking for wedding flowers, but maybe somebody would be searching flowers for my wedding. And those words are separated, but it means the same thing. And so you're going to get different quality search results within these keyword search tools that will affect your ability to do SEO. And so I recommend users start off with the free tools, play around with it, see what you can do with it, see what type of searches you're finding. It can also be beneficial because you have to create some sort of a starter phrase in order to get all these results. So my starter keyword for this was wedding flowers, but it could also be beneficial to talk to friends and family and see if they have any recommendations on how they would search differently for this. Maybe they would type in something different instead of wedding flowers, and then you could search through different keywords for that. The way you're going to be utilizing these keywords then within your website is as you are creating your about section on the website, as you have product descriptions, as you are making blog posts, anything like that, any words that are on your website, incorporating these keywords or these keyword search terms within your website can help the Google algorithm and help the Bing algorithm to say, oh, okay, this is exactly what this person was searching for. This article mentions it 3 times, or this website has a lot of that information on their website. This isn't necessarily a foolproof. It's not a matter of, okay, how many keywords can I pack into my article? Because then that becomes very unnatural and you lose that consumer connection aspect that is the most important part. So we did get a question about what free keyword search tools would I recommend. That'll all be sent out with that information document of the different resources that I recommend, just because there are several that are, in my opinion, equally as good. And even I would suggest using several of them because their research is a little bit different between each. So when I send out that document, I'll send out some options with both free and paid versions. I would recommend going through all the free versions, seeing what information you can collect from there. And then if you need more, moving on to some of those paid versions. But I won't bore you by listing off any URLs or anything at this moment. So thank you for your questions. All right, so another one of those really important things to look at with both Google and Bing, equally as important, is a backlink, which is otherwise known as an inbound link. Oh, before we jump to this, we do have a question about the keywords. So someone asked, do the keywords have to be part of the text that the user reads online, or are they something you add to the website, or your web designer would do that, or both? So I think that essentially what you're asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is do you include keywords in the text that your user is reading, or are they part of the source code that's kind of behind your website that people don't read? It's both to some extent. I tend to recommend using it in your within the text that you're writing that users are reading, because that's easier for business owners to do. It's less technical, but if you have a web designer, they certainly can write that in. There's also something that is called metadata, which is kind of a whole workshop in itself, but the basic idea of metadata is you have meta tags and meta descriptions, just to oversimplify it. Meta tags are meta titles are what you're reading when you Google search something. So let me, if we come across an example of a Google search in the future of this presentation, I'll be sure to point that out. But it's essentially the title that tells you what the name of the blog is or what the name of the article is. It's that purple link that you can click on. Whereas the meta descriptions are kind of what a description of what that page is about, which goes right underneath that in the search results. So Google used to use meta descriptions as part of their SEO, but they no longer do because people are just packing it full of keywords to try and bump themselves up in the SEO, and it became unreadable and really not a useful feature at all. So they did away with that. Google or Bing and Yahoo still use keywords within their meta descriptions, but you're not going to get that same benefit from Google. Within the meta titles, you still get some of that benefit. Within just general metadata overall, Google still utilizes those, but I tend to take kind of more holistic, focus on your customer first, and focus on information that's still going to be beneficial to them while improving your SEO, and get kind of twofold benefit out of that before really getting into the nitty gritty of having somebody rewrite your source code or anything like that. If that all just kind of went in one ear and out the other for some people, don't worry. That isn't anything you're going to have to be concerned with for your SEO specifically or the rest of the presentation. But let's move along to something that's a little bit more technical than keywords, which is backlinks. But once you get the idea of backlinks, then you don't have to worry about the technical aspects nearly as much as keywords. So you kind of get a little bit more of it up front. So a backlink is when you have one website that has an external link to your website. So let's say that I come up with a good business. Let's say that I am a coffee grinder. So I grind coffee. I'm a coffee farmer. I have that whole production on my facility. And so I sell ground coffee on my website. I also happen to be an expert on coffee. So I write articles and blogs about how to become a coffee connoisseur and such. So I am website B with all these different articles about coffee. Website A is a local coffee shop or another large coffee business that's not necessarily in direct competition with mine usually. So they're writing another article about how to become a coffee connoisseur, and they say, hey, website B, my website, has a lot of really good information about this. You can click here on our website to go to theirs. So if I'm a user, I'm looking at website A, they're giving me information on how to be a coffee connoisseur, and then they say, click here to get more information from website B. I click there, and I'm taken to website B. That link between the two is called a backlink. If that doesn't make any sense to you, please throw something in the chat box for me and I'll try and clarify a little bit more. But backlinks work essentially as votes for your website. If you have a lot of other websites saying, hey, I got really good credible information from website B, here's the link to get you there. Let's say you have 5, 10, 800 people, websites doing that, then Google looks at that and says, a lot of people have found this information very, very useful. And so they're going to bump you up in the SEO because clearly your article has a lot of really good, useful information. So check our chat box here. So yes, that would be essentially a hyperlink where you would be able to either click on the link itself or the link address itself, or sometimes they have those buttons where it's like click here and you can click on the word here where they've embedded that hyperlink. So yes, you can do that. Another question was, how do you get another site to point to yours? I have some great tips and tricks here which will help to kind of cover that information. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, but it's a good kind of getting started point. The simple answer is you just ask people to link back to you. So if that seems a little intimidating, you can do some of these first two strategies, which is internal links. So you can have your own blog posts link back to other blog posts. And that will increase the SEO for each individual page. What I would recommend doing with this is pick a post that you think has really great content that is already becoming more popular than your other posts, and then have your other blog posts link to that one. So that way you can have a spider web effect where they're linking to others, but eventually you want the center one, the one that kind of connects it all, to be your really good, great content. Because if you have a lot of backlinks going to that particular blog post, then on that page, Google's going to bump that up through the search results. And if you can get one page high up in the search results and get people on your page, then they're going to start searching the rest of your website, which is going to increase your SEO. So don't worry about it being a very, very spread out effort. Concentrate it on 1 or 2 blog posts or pages, and then the effect will multiply through the rest of your website. Moving right along, how do you get other people to link to your posts or link to your blog? One great resource for this is called HARO, which stands for Help a Reporter Out. And that's a website where you can go and sign up as what's called a source, and you fill out information about what you're an expert in, what topics that you're related to, and what industry you're in, essentially. And then you can sign up for different plans. They have a pay or a free plan. They also have paid plans where they'll send you emails every time a reporter gets on this website to look for a source. So, for instance, if a reporter was looking for information on the difference between Google and Bing for SEO information, well, I might read that and say, hey, I know something about that. And so then I could create a very short 1-paragraph pitch to this reporter to say, hey, I'm an expert in my field. This is how I'm an expert. This is my experience. That should be 1 or 2 sentences. And then you can say, this is the very brief, concise, and clear explanation to your question. And then they'll be quoting you directly from that or paraphrasing you directly from that within their content that these reporters are creating. And they're also going to credit you. And so when they credit you, they'll sometimes make it directly a backlink. They'll sometimes also just credit your name. When they do that, then what you can do with either them or other people who are just crediting you by name but haven't created that link back to you, is just send them an email and say, hey, I really appreciate that you have credited me with this, or that you found my information useful, something like that. If you would like, here's a link to an article that I think is also relevant to this. You could go ahead and put it in your website as well. Or would you mind linking to my website through this? Because if you're already on their page on their website, if they've already credited you with it, just not backlinked to you, they already have given you this vote of approval that they like your information and that they trust you. And so asking them for that backlink at that point is a very low risk kind of ask. And more than likely, they're going to do that. Another thing that you can do is you can contact other industry professionals who I would suggest are not in direct competition with you, but have maybe complementing services or products, and you can agree to backlink to each other. And so you can have kind of a trade-off effect with that, where you both increase your SEO. You want to make sure, though, that it's somebody who's not going to be fighting you for your SEO rankings with the same search results. So like I said, a competing business is not necessarily the best way to go. A complementing business is probably going to be better for you. So internal links and HARO are probably the 2 most low risk, quote unquote, low risk to you socially, personally kind of thing. Because I know that I myself kind of get a little hesitant with point blank asking for things, especially for backlinks or anything like that. But essentially, that is the way to go to increase your content or to increase your SEO. And if you have good quality content, then it's not going to be a burden to the other person. In fact, it may be a benefit to them because they're probably looking for more information from that. So somebody asked if you would be able to do this with professional associations, chambers of commerce, or things like that. Yes, if you have relevant information to what they're talking about, absolutely. I would recommend shooting them an email and saying, hey, loved the article that you wrote, or I love the work that you do, or something like that. I have this article that is related to this topic, and I think that lends well as evidence of what you're talking about. Please feel free to check it out, and if you like it, also please feel free to backlink me in it. And that can definitely be something that you do. Google and Bing put a lot of emphasis and really favor the .gov and .edu sites. And so, so if you can get your website backlinked through a .gov or .edu site, that can be really, really beneficial for your SEO, because a lot more people are seeing those and are going to find your site through it. We also had a question, can you backlink to websites without asking their permission? Yes, you certainly can, yeah. In fact, I think that other websites would greatly appreciate you doing that. It's essentially citing your sources or giving more information. And so if you find a website or an article that you think is particularly helpful to your audience, you can throw that backlink in there without asking them permission at all. These are all great questions. Keep them coming. All right, so moving right along, you can use what's called skyscraper content in addition to backlinks for backlinks. So we kind of talked about backlinks for backlinks, where you are trading off that, hey, if you give me a backlink, I'll give you a backlink. But you can also look at skyscraper content, which is look for a topic or a type of article or something that is within your industry that you are an expert on, and see what the top results are for that. Read through it and then try to create something better on the same topic. You can probably find a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit within your industry to be able to do this and write really good content on it. And so once you've created that really excellent content, then you want to send it to the backlinks that were reported on that first page's website. And so that way you're kind of infiltrating to some degree their backlink network, and you're working yourself into the same area. In addition, hunt out other articles on the topic, and then go ahead and send your articles backlink to them, or your articles linked to them with the same email of, hey, I love the work that you do. I think that this article that I wrote really lends to the topic that you're talking about, and would be useful information as well. Essentially, SEO is a game of real estate. How many friends can you make? How many properties can you pick up? It's how wide of a reach can you have? So you're going to get rejected a lot. You're not going to get responses a lot to these emails. But the more of them you send out that are quality, not just spammy, but the more quality asks that you send out, the better your chances are to receive something back for that. All right, we have a couple more questions here. Somebody asked if we're strictly talking about backlinks on a website blog, or if we are talking about backlinks being helpful in our social media platforms as well. So for the sake of the research I did for this, I'm primarily focused on websites and blogs, although your social media can also benefit from some of these as well. I'm just not, I think that would be more so of like, instead of doing backlinks through your social media posts, it would look a little bit more like tagging somebody and having them tag you, or tag your page. So same concept essentially, but a little bit of a different actual implementation of it. And it also asked, is it good to link your site to a Facebook site? I think that, it couldn't hurt, certainly. I would give it a try. And if all else fails, then you're at least directing your users to that Facebook page, which, if you want them to be there, is always going to be a good thing. And we'll discuss a little bit more at the end as well, but it is worth noting that Bing and Yahoo put a lot more emphasis on your connection to a quality social media page than Google does. So if you're just targeting Google, you don't necessarily need to focus on building up your social media for the sake of SEO. I would still recommend doing so for your consumers, but you definitely would want to do a lot more of a focus on that if you're looking at doing Bing or Yahoo. So the final kind of trick that you can use, or strategy you can use, is to replace a competitor's outdated or unusable backlinks. So what this means is when you find out that a website has either changed their name or done something where sometimes websites will change their name, they have to move their whole platform to another website. So the previous links that they had sent out, the previous things that were backlinked to them are no longer good or viable because those links don't lead anywhere anymore since they basically moved their domain elsewhere. If they're one of your competitors, this can be a really, really great opportunity to kind of slip in, find out. There are some tools that I'll send you that will allow you to kind of reverse search and see, okay, where are their backlinks coming from? And then reach out to those people who are backlinking them and tell them, hey, I saw that one of your links wasn't working anymore, but I have this article that I think is comparable that provides some good information. Here's the link to mine. It's likely that because you've done a lot of the work for them, you've both, one, found that the article or the link wasn't working anymore, and two, provided a good alternative. It's likely that they'll substitute your link in there and you'll gain a backlink through that. You can also do this not just by seeing if a business has changed domains, but sometimes backlinks will go out for other reasons, or those domains will go out for other reasons. So if you're on an article and you find that someone has a backlink that's gone down, that's in your industry, go ahead and just send them a message and say, hey, this link has gone down, but I think I have a comparable article or solution to that. So this can be another way to really get in and kind of collect some of that quote unquote real estate. I'm gonna kind of start trucking right along here. The links and backlinks is kind of a little bit longer of the portion, but I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. So I'm going to speed through some of this other stuff, but it's pretty self-explanatory with the tools that I'll send you as well. So you want to make sure that your website is going to be mobile friendly. The way that I would recommend doing this is, one, a lot of website builders will have a mobile view and a desktop view that you can toggle between. I would check it, make sure that everything you're doing looks good on a mobile phone. But in addition, you can just Google, is my website mobile friendly? And then it's going to bring up this kind of test link underneath. Insert, copy your web address into there, and then it will pull up a report that looks something like this. So it'll show you off to the right what your website looks like on a mobile phone, and it'll tell you on the left whether it's good for mobile, bad for mobile, and if it's bad, it'll show you what you need to fix. And so off to the right, clearly this site is not mobile friendly. None of the images are showing up. Everything has reduced down to these kind of clickable hyperlinks instead of actually having information. And so the page is not mobile friendly. If you scroll down under pages not mobile friendly, then it will tell you why down here, as well as you can go even further down to additional resources and click learn how to fix these errors, and it will tell you what you need to do specifically for each in order to fix it. At times it may be something that you are personally able to fix. At times it may be something that you're going to have to contact a web developer to fix. But altogether, knowing if your website is mobile friendly and making sure it works both on mobile phones and on desktop is going to be of great importance to your SEO. So the name of this site, the reason that I instructed you to go through it through Google is because it's a little bit difficult to get. For some reason, when I was finding that site on Google's actual page, it's called Google Search Console, but it was glitching out every time I was trying to search anything. And so the only way that I've been able to make it work is to do so through this Google search, is my website mobile friendly? And then it'll just, this is the first result it will bring up to allow you to do that. But if you don't want to use this and you would like to use a third-party tool, you certainly can. You can just search, is my website mobile friendly again, and further down in the search results, you'll find other checkers for that. Thank you for the question. So moving right along, we also want to make sure that our page speed is good. Like I said, not only is this good for your SEO, but you're more likely to be able to retain customers on your page if your page loads quickly. If people are having to wait even 1, 2, 3 seconds, each second exponentially increases the rate at which customers are clicking off of your web page. And so there are lots of kind of tips and tricks you can utilize for this, but I just wanted to show you a tool that will give you an analysis of all that to begin with, and that's called Google PageSpeed Insights. So you go to the Google PageSpeed Insights webpage, and it'll just have on the front a place where you can put your URL and do a check. It gives you a score here out of 100 of how good your website is, and you can toggle between mobile and desktop. So it gives you a different score for mobile and desktop. Oftentimes, your website will load a lot slower on a mobile phone, so you really want to optimize that, because once again, that will make your mobile device or your website more mobile friendly. So it kind of goes through and gives some of these metrics to look at as well. This is something where it'll, if you scroll down past this, it will give you some fixes that you can do. Once again, you may be needing to contact a web developer to be able to really optimize this to the best of your website's ability, but it also, to some degree, has to do with what domain you're using or what website hosting platform you're going through. So some of them tend to lag a little bit more than others, especially as you get more products or more content on your web page. All right, so that leads to the question, should you use Google, Bing, or Yahoo? Like I said earlier, I would recommend every business who's trying to update their SEO to focus on Google, or at least have Google be part of their strategy. Bing and Yahoo tends to have a very, their audience and users tend to be kind of in the baby boomer age range, so it will be ages 55 and up. And then it also tends to appeal more to blue collar workers. So if your target market fits within that description, then I would say yes, 100% you need to be on Bing and Yahoo. And once again, Bing and Yahoo, owned by the same company, same SEO strategy for you. Here's some of the differences between Google, which is what we've primarily discussed up till this point, and Bing and Yahoo. With Bing and Yahoo, they're looking for exact keyword matches. So once again, going back to that wedding flowers example, if somebody were to search wedding flowers or, I don't know, peonies in wedding flowers, then Google would understand that they're looking for this particular type of flower that is in a wedding bouquet, and so they direct them to pages that have that implied. Bing, on the other hand, and Yahoo would need that exact phrase within your website to optimize your SEO. So it's a little bit more restrictive in that way, and it's a little bit more difficult to write content that appeals to both the algorithm and to consumers, because you're having to write a little bit more robotically. Next up, Bing and Yahoo do favor and give large benefit to utilizing multimedia within your website. So that includes videos and pictures. If you have blogs, articles, anything like that that includes those, then you're going to rank higher in Bing and Yahoo. They also are able to process Flash as part of their SEO. Google does not. I believe they were phasing it out. I believe they got to the point where they're not doing Flash at all. And so if you have Flash as part of your website, you may be more beneficial with Bing or Yahoo. Bing Yahoo also prefers good social media engagement. So in that instance, linking back to your Facebook page would be a really great thing. Having a lot of click-throughs from your website to your social media, or from your social media to your website, is also going to benefit you. And then, this is kind of what I was describing earlier with meta descriptions. Bing and Yahoo do still utilize meta descriptions as part of their SEO rankings, where Google does not at all any longer. So I'm not sure, once again, if I come across, I don't recall if I put a search query in this presentation, but if I do, I'll try and just explain a little bit better what I mean by these meta descriptions. But hopefully by this point you're not feeling totally overwhelmed, but if you are and you're deciding maybe it's just time to outsource this to a professional, these are some things that I would recommend keeping in mind and questions to ask a professional to make sure you're getting somebody who knows what they're doing. So first off, recognize that there's no quick fix. SEO is definitely the long game. Other marketing strategies like paid marketing are going to get you a little bit more of that fast traffic to your website. But if you want long-term results, SEO is the way to go. And just as you probably won't be able to immediately see benefit in your SEO, a professional is also not going to be able to get you a lot of immediate benefit, because it's all about social traction. And it's all about the more people who like your website, the more that Google is going to recognize that people like it, and it's going to bump it up, which causes more people to like it. And it really is a snowball effect, but it takes some time. Additionally, your SEO professional should not be focused on keyword rankings more than they are on the return on your investment. So you want to make sure that they understand that you're putting dollars toward it and you want to get dollars out of it. A professional should have the ability to communicate back clearly what kind of impact it may have on your ROI, instead of just saying, well, we got you ranking #1 for wedding flowers. That's all great and dandy, but once again, if you have huge traffic to your website but you're not converting anybody, then you're not going to find any benefit in that. So like I said, increased traffic is useless unless it can be converted. They should also be able to implement a good balance of technical, user experience, and off-page SEO. So those are kind of the 3 elements of SEO. We went over a couple of those in each, but technical is going to be like your page speed. Your page speed, that can get a little bit more into your source code. That can obviously be a little bit more difficult for individuals to utilize, but SEO professionals should have a good understanding of technical. User experience, which goes into, is the content good? Do the keywords make sense as a user is reading it, and is it mobile friendly? And then off-page SEO relates a lot to backlinks, so things that are off your page that are linking back to you. We have a question that says that they've been told by a marketing company that they've seen Google, quote unquote, gray list new websites for a year. And you'll see site traffic increase dramatically after that first year if you're creating meaningful content in the first year. I personally have not noticed that phenomenon. I haven't done research necessarily into a gray list or anything like that, but I would encourage you to kind of search around and see if anybody else is seeing this. It may just be that you're having, like, you have to get that snowball effect and gain some traction, but it could also, in my opinion, it could also equally be that they're not getting results as quickly as they were hoping, and so they're creating this Google gray list. But I would encourage you to do a little bit of research into that and see what comes from it. So your SEO professional should also be able to give you a general timeline for results. So I suppose this kind of plays into your question also. While yes, it does take a little bit to get traction going, they shouldn't have no idea when they could get any results for you. They should be experienced enough that they could say, based off of your industry, based off of the current status of your page, this is about what we think we could get in about this time frame. That's going to give you some element of assurance and a benchmark to some degree to see, is this actually working? Are they actually doing what they said they were going to be able to do? Next, you want to look at how do they conduct keyword research. So the keyword tools that I gave you were very kind of basic, elementary, because true keyword research takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, because you have to be able to look at look at the keywords kind of like Google does, where it's more holistic. Looking at it as a human is like, how do these words all connect together instead of what's just the very exact words. And so they should have better tools than you would have access to be able to do keyword research. If they do not, I would suggest going with somebody else who's going to have better access to those tools. Finally, another reason to shop local, local experts tend to cost a lot less than nationwide experts. And just to kind of highlight that, the different pricing scales, because I know that's a big factor for a lot of people and a lot of business owners, I wanted to give you a just general breakdown of what that could look like. So there are three ways that SEO professionals are generally going to be paid. That's either hourly, on a monthly retainer, or per project. I couldn't tell you how many hours to estimate because every website is so different. Everybody needs such different SEO features that would be something you'd have to consult with this professional and get their opinion on how long it's going to take. But hourly, the primary cost is going to be about $100 and $150 an hour. If you do a monthly retainer, you're looking at anywhere from $250 to $5,000, which is quite a wide scope, but that'll let you know you can do something a little bit in the middle. And then per project, you're looking at somewhere around $1,000 to $1,500, or you're going to get way up there a little bit more and get to like the $2,500 to $5,000 range. One thing to note is that when it comes to SEO, this is something where you definitely get what you pay for. And so, you know, ask the professional how much experience they have, how many years they've been doing this. Ask what websites they've done the SEO for, and check out the websites. See if you can find them through a search. Do a little bit of that back research on them to see if they know what they're talking about and aren't just somebody who decided that this is what they're going to go forward and do from now on without any training or experience. All right, so that kind of wraps up what I had presented. We have just a couple minutes until 4, so I understand if you need to go ahead and head out, but I'll be sticking around for about 5 minutes to answer any questions that you may have. So the follow-up PowerPoint and everything will be sent out within the next couple days. So after we get the presentation all downloaded and everything, then we'll go ahead and send that out to you. So don't worry if you haven't received that yet, it's on its way. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Oh, never mind, I spoke too soon. Somebody asked if I had any tips for sentences used on blog posts. I suppose I'm not necessarily fully understanding what you're meaning by that, but I would say as you're focusing on creating content, especially for blog posts, then I would suggest to create just content that's going to appeal to the user. So don't worry so much on how the sentences are going to be formed for your SEO. I would focus a little bit more on who's going to be reading them and what are they going to be searching, where I can input that to where it's still relevant. So there are lots of tips as well as to the types of content that's going to work really well for blog posts. So ultimate guides to something where you do really in-depth research and write 5,000 words on a topic are also extremely popular. List guides, quizzes, those kinds of posts tend to do very well. And there are some that are escaping my mind now. So I'd say go ahead and do a little bit of research on that, see what you can find as far as the top kinds of blog posts in your industry, especially. But in general, just write for your audience and that'll get you the furthest, because not only will increased click-through to your website from those audiences raise your SEO on its own, but you're going to have higher conversion if you're appealing to the human factor as well. Just before anybody has to click off here, I want to make sure that I'm reminding you that we do have a short evaluation that you will also receive with the presentation and the materials that will be coming afterward. You can fill that out. I greatly appreciate that. It just allows me to know how I'm doing with these presentations, where we can benefit, if there are any unserved needs that we can create presentations for you. So please fill that out. I greatly appreciate it. Somebody asked if I've ever used freelance. So I haven't personally used freelance. I have heard good things about it though. So, you know, I would say it's probably equitable to any other of those kinds of freelance collection websites. So I would say that you may get good results out of it. I can't say for certain. Somebody asked how frequently you need to update your SEO to be effective. Constantly. Unfortunately, it's not a one and done kind of thing, because updates do come out randomly. They're not scheduled updates. So I would say, first off, just stay up to date as best you can on the information that's coming out. But if you're wanting to improve your SEO, there's always continuous improvement that can be had. And so looking at what kind of tips and tricks there are, and as you learn more, you'll have the ability to do more technical work. And I would recommend just continuing to do that. So if you're hiring an SEO professional, you may want to be really informing yourself in the time that they're trying to improve your SEO, because if you decide to stop utilizing their services, your SEO could potentially drop if you're not able to maintain it to some degree. All right, it looks like that might be the wrap up to the end of some of the questions. If you have any other questions, or you have questions that are more specific to you and your situation, please feel free to email me. My email's on the screen here. It's ksbdcadvisor@wichita.edu. I'd love to chat with you and just kind of get some of these things talked out and see if we can get you in a better place with your search engine optimization. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on future workshops. We have a new series that's coming up in July, so stay tuned for that.